Hello and welcome back to this edition of Daily Actives brought to you by Bootleg Macro. I'm Dustin. We are looking at Mara. Now, this has been a remarkable move. Just today, we've seen 16.10% in Mara. Over the past 5 days, we are up 13.86%. The unfortunate part is if you've been holding for 15 days, 20 days, or 60 days, because in that situation, you are down negative 27%, down 2% over 1 month. Remarkable move if you think about that 15-day, and down about 9.5% over the past 60 days. Now, if you've held over 6 months or 1 year, you're still sitting very pretty. If we look at the overall chart on the side here, we can see we've seen a lot of consolidation. We are bouncing off what looks like the bottom of the range. Really very interesting here. The top of the range we see at 25.30. I don't necessarily think that that's out of the question. If we look at the raw data here in terms of what Mara has been doing, Mara essentially has given you a very good pullback. We look a little bit further back, one of the things I like to look at is when the 3 month, this is just a really easy one to look at, but when the 3 month went positive after being negative, you can see here it was essentially negative in the end of 2023. It didn't really get positive or confirm positive as I would consider it till right here. I generally would like to see, in my opinion, the way that I look at the data, I like to see two confirmations. So the first one is like, hey, pay attention. The second one's like, okay, that's for real. And then we don't get a flip to a bearish rolling return with two consecutive until now. So this would have been a long bullish move that I would have respected. You also get to see it in the signals in the short term, intermediate term, and longer term, as well as the trend, which is bullish in the short term, intermediate term, and longer term. And if you're using that same kind of idea that you need two confirmations to know that you're flipping, this would have been bearish. That would have not been anything. And then this would have officially been bullish again. And you've been bullish, bullish. Actually, you've been bullish for quite a while here. Mara's been a good signal. Now, if we look at where we are now, the question is this an opportunity to buy? Is this a dip to buy? Or is this something we should be concerned about because this is a fundamental change in the character of the stock? Now, understanding that a little bit more about Mara than I normally would, we know that Mara is specifically going to be just a stock that is specifically more related to Bitcoin. If we look at what we've seen now, we do want to have some respect for Bitcoin. So we'll go ahead. Oh, Bitcoin's not showing up. This is one of the reasons why, by the way, Google Finance data is just some of the worst sometimes because they just choose to give you the data and sometimes they choose you to not give you the data. It's just a little tough. But if we're looking at Mara here back with the raw data for the daily, we do see that the price was in the blue with a white background 1 day with blue lettering. That means it's 3 standard deviations below its 23-day moving average. And here with the blue lettering with the black or the blue background with the black lettering, that means it's 2 standard deviations below its 23-day moving average. Now, when we see it with the green, this means it's right back in the middle of the range. Now, that's good to see. The reason why it's good to see in the middle of the range is because that's a very normal place for it to be, especially considering this thing has been up at 29.30 as of the end of February. We're looking at where the 5-day moving average is at 1974. So we essentially went below it. We went below the range, and now we have bounced back. That is very good to see in terms of the way it's looking, as well as you can see this essentially was a dive in the 5-day moving average. We essentially bottomed here at 1920, and now we are rising back up. Also very good to see. We'd like to get above the 23-day moving average. This is ironically at $23.33. We don't see the nice thing is today when we look at the price move that we saw, which is up 16% over 1 day, we do see what looks like to be at least a little surge in volume. We saw 73 million. We had not seen 73 million or more since this significant drop the day that it was down 12%. And before that, we'd seen some days where that was kind of leading into it. So this could be a very good indication that we are seeing our way out of this valley. Now, I'd love to see the price to rise inside of the future path indicator. I'd really like to see the short term and the intermediate term and the longer term go to flipping long, as well as I'd like to see some bullishness in the short term and intermediate term. I think if we look over here at the sentiment, this is rolling sentiment, which is really kind of more an indication of what we should expect based on the price movement. We are just below that 50%. We're at 49%. But if we look here on the 10-day rolling, you can see we're finally flipping back up above 50%. Even on the 23-day, we're now starting to flip back up. We didn't go below 47. We're at 48 now as of tomorrow. That is very good to see. Now, if we look at the signals, the question is going to be here, what kind of trading signals do we see? We have very recently seen the bearishness in the bear key 3, which you'd expect based on the price action we've already reviewed. Now, if we're looking at the bull key 3, one of the things that I'd like to highlight is that we do not currently have any bull key 3. We don't have any string. We don't have like ones. We don't have any similar to what you saw in the bear. We don't have any compounding, signals there. We do have a big bear, do have a small bear, but we do not have any of these signals. What we want to see, I'd love to see a swift bull, and I'd love to see a 1 month bull trigger. I forget exactly what those indicators mean. I'd love to see a buy signal too. You can see when those are grouped together, that's very good. I'd love to see one of those things, but for now, it looks like if I'm looking at the actual signals too, the only signals we're actually getting are buy. We're seeing pullbacks, right? And that's not to be feared, especially in a long-term bear or in a long-term bull market. If we go back to the crypto, I wish crypto would work. Let's just restore this real quick to see if it, there we go. Yes, we'll continue to allow you to do that. So the data is loading. This is one of the issues of using Google Finance. And by the way, if you're interested, I'm actually going to create a whole different product. It's going to be based completely off of this model, but you're going to be able to look for stocks that you're looking at. So like if I want to see Mara here, it's going to be able to pull the same kind of data and give you the same kind of output, except it's not based off Google. This is a different API because I want to make sure to get consistency in the data provider. But I digress. Bitcoin here, if we look at the weekly, is fantastic. We are still positive on the 5-week, 5-month, 1 year, 15-week, or 15-month and 18-month. And if you look at this, it's remarkable. The 18-month flipped in November of 2023. Been a very good signal ever since. We look at the daily crypto. We can see, though, we are seeing a slight change, at least in the very recent data. Now, the unfortunate part, again, related to Google, is that the way that their data is provided, it's very, very slow. So we're still looking at the 19th here, but yesterday it was flipping negative on the 1 month, which it hadn't done that. We'd want to see 2 days in a row, which I've shown before in some of my other videos. We want to see a confirmation, but we are negative on the 5-day rolling return. We haven't had that in quite a while in Bitcoin. We would need to break 71. We'd need to break really like 69 pretty quick here. 69.70 to really show that we are going to sustain this to a higher price. I mean, Bitcoin now, it's a global asset that has true institutional demand. So the idea that we couldn't break 70,000 is actually, it doesn't seem reasonable. We should be able to easily break 100K because you should be able to get the flows, even if you're just seeing an expansion in terms of like ETFs, mutual funds, just regulatory change. I mean, it makes no sense why we shouldn't be able to break 75,000 or 100,000. But if we look, we still have some go long signals, and this is boding very, very well for Mara. If we go back to Mara, we can look at the charts. Mara, we should look at the correlation. What's the correlation of Bitcoin? Does it have the correlation? Let's look. I believe I have it on here. Yeah, let's look. So it's funny because the correlation of Bitcoin is actually like negative now, which I am shocked by, to be honest. Actually, incredibly shocked by. Maybe it's because this has been falling while Bitcoin has been rising. But it does look like, and I'm assuming, let's go ahead and look exactly where that is. I forget exactly where the correlation is. I'll have to look and see. I think it's over here. Yeah, it's over here. I forget exactly what we're looking at, but it's falling now. No, it's barely. The way that Mara is looking relative to Bitcoin, I would say, is that Mara is going to start falling along and Bitcoin's probably going to start rallying. We look at the overall sentiment of Mara, it's under 50%. It's not a great signal. But I do think that we're going to get another S curve. And essentially, you're at the unfortunate part is that you could be at the beginning of a further down move. But because we're already around 50% and the bottom of this range is generally going to be around 40% on this kind of an indicator, it's really hard to go above 70 because this is an oscillator, right? This is a percentage of bullish or bearishness. And it usually wants to be in perfect yin and yang. This is really what I think would be, in my opinion, would be the best setup would be you'd get a little bit of sideways action for a little bit longer, and then you'd get a coil to go higher. Essentially, the action that we've seen in Mara so far, this sideways action since December. Because this is just December was the breakout, really. That's really the breakout. December 8th, you got a big spike higher. We haven't broken that since. We've just been going sideways. I'd love to stay in this range a little bit longer, somewhere underneath that 31. Hang out maybe around 23, which is pretty much where we are, and then just go higher. Coil a little bit and move higher. And you can even see it on the weekly. What I love too is that you've got a higher high in the range on the weekly, as well as, but that's what we need to see on the daily. We need to see a higher high on the daily for this range. The range needs to go higher than 35. If it doesn't go higher than 35, you can't trust it, but that is the signal we're looking for. You need to see the bottom come up. You need to see it get above 1832. We need to see the high get above 35.50. Give it time. But tell me what you think in the comments below. Are you long? Are you short? Do you like it? Do you love it? Is this even a good review? Before you go, subscribe to the New High newsletter. We send you 25 stocks to your inbox every single Sunday. Stocks between $5 and $20 that are breaking out. Stocks breaking out to 1-year highs. Stocks breaking out to all-time highs. This is a great list to get your trading week started.